All right, you are all welcome to the LAMAD conference. This is Harkheindzel OMIYALE, and I am the speaker. I'm the only speaker for this particular conference. A lot of people who will be taking part in this conference are either members of the LAMAD community or a direct reach out from a member of the LAMAD community. Whichever category you belong to, you are welcome. Now, we really need to dive into the business of the day, and I cannot overemphasize the importance of what you're about to listen to. Okay, so put away every form of distractions, or anything that would not allow you to have a full focus and attention to what you're about to listen right now. Okay, so if you've done that, now we can get ready for a smooth home ride. Okay, so let's get things a bit more on the serious note. I just did that in order to make sure that the energy of the conference is a bit more, on the lively side. Even though some of the things we really want to talk about are very serious matters. When it comes to money matters, they are serious matters. Okay, so let's have a lot of attention, as we begin to go on into what we have today. So let's move on a bit further from what we have working with us today. The first things first is that when we talk about creating wealth, creation is actually simple, but it is not easy. And that is the bone of contention. That is the problem. That is the question. And that is the thing that needs answers. Okay? You need to understand before we go into anything that we're going into right now, this must be the foundation. Creation, in fact, is simple, but it is not easy. Now, what does that mean? It means that to create something, there are simple steps to it. They're not difficult steps. They're not complicated steps. But in order to get to each steps and fulfill the demands of each steps, now that can be where the challenge is for a lot of people. So I can tell you this. To get into the real estate industry, it's a very simple thing. It's to find fertile ground, to find customers, and buy up land. But is it easy? May not. Because what is the condition? You need a lot of capital to really thrive in the real market industry. Okay, so you understand how it works. So creation itself is simple. Once you have that in mind, it opens a lot of doors for you. The problem a lot of people have is that they're not aware of certain opportunities, certain knowledge, and so they do not see, their perceptions are not opened to see such opportunity. So let's get this started the right way. Creation is simple, but it isn't easy. Now, when it comes to the simplicity of creating anything, I'm going to tell you how it works. You might find something similar, or you might never have come across it before, but I'm going to tell you that what you're about to listen to has the potential to change your life forever. Okay, so let's get into the simplicity of creating anything. So first things first, it usually starts with a seed. A seed is the smallest essence of life. It's like a DNA, it's like a coding that everything comes out of that smallest point. Sometimes a seed could be as simple as a thought or an idea. A seed could be as simple as a photon of light. So the first thing you need to understand in order to create anything is that you must have the seed of that thing. Something in its raw form that needs to go through certain processes and all in order to come out finished on the other side. Now, the next thing is the ground. Now, all of these are metaphorical, okay? Now, a ground is where the seed needs to be planted. You can have a seed for all you want. If you do not have a ground, the seed is as useless in the sense that it cannot produce more of its kind. Now, the ground is where you incubate that seed. Now, it's the place where it is hidden from everyone else, but there are internal workings going on with the seed. And that's where atmosphere and environment is very important. Now, atmosphere and environment, sometimes people use them interchangeably, but they're not always the same thing. Now, atmosphere has to work with a bit more specificity, okay? The atmosphere is usually small, it's usually nuclear, just something in a controlled environment, sort of, that enables or brings the perception of a form of system or a form of life. In short, atmosphere builds influence, okay? The effect of influence usually comes through an atmosphere. Now, an environment is something that has been sustained over a period of time that has become a legal entity. We're going to be talking more about legal entities as we move on. Now, after the knowledge of atmospheres and environment, you need to understand laws. If you don't understand laws, you will not know the right law. There are thousands and tens of thousands of laws. However, the wisdom in it is finding the law that needs to work with the seed in the ground by reason of the atmosphere and the environment. So, for example, gravity is a law. Whether you acknowledge it's there, whether you don't acknowledge it's there, as long as you're on the earth, to one level or the other, you're under the influence of gravity. Okay? Now, the next thing, quite similar to laws, is so by definition, a law is a rule that has an authority of government behind it. So it actually carries clear consequences for those who violate it. So if you jump off a 21-story building, you're gonna fall and you're probably gonna die. Not because you want to die, but there are certain laws that shows that when you act in certain ways, there will be consequences. And these are some of the things you need to understand. Besides laws, we also have principles. Now, principles are not laws, but laws and principles kind of work together. Now, justice is not a law. Justice is a principle. Okay, so when we talk about principle, a principle is actually a fundamental truth or a fundamental position that serves as the foundation for a system of belief or a system of behavior or even a chain of reasoning. Okay, so some people call principles moral order. So we need laws and principles in order for atmospheres and environments to be set. Okay, you need to understand that. It's getting complex, isn't it? Okay, now a plant comes up from the seed in the ground because the atmosphere and the environment has been able to condition the ground and the laws. So there are how do you put it? There are mechanisms in the ground which forms the atmosphere of the seed, and there are mechanisms in the air which form the laws, okay, of the environment. And it's that gives instructions to the seeds in the ground, commanding it to grow. And it is when the seed comes out of the ground that it becomes a plant. But you also need to understand that the plant is not really what you need, but it's a manifestation of that which has come out from the seed. Now, the essence of the plant now becomes an outward journey. Now, all of the journeys we've had in the ground were inward journeys, and then we need to have outward journeys from the plant. Is now out of the plant that the fruits actually come out. But the important thing is, besides the fruit, we need a seed. Now, you need to understand that if you do not end with the seed, your creation process is not perfect. So a perfect creation process is one that starts with a seed and ends with a seed. So wealth starts with a seed and ends with seeds. Okay, so there must be productivity, reproduction, and multiplicity from the seed that comes at the beginning that now becomes seeds at the end of it all. Let's move on further. So, what are the principles of wealth? You need to understand this because this is what begins to give you direction as to where things are actually going. Now, wealth starts within. Remember, the seed has to be in the ground and has to break within the ground because of the atmosphere that is within the ground. But what causes the atmosphere within the ground is the environment in the air outside the ground. Now, the atmosphere inside the ground helps the seed, but the environment outside the ground prepares the plant from coming out of the seed. And then from out of the plant, we have fruits when we have good conducive environment. And then out of the fruit, in the process of time, then we have seeds, which is maturation. Now, we need to understand that even though the principle of wealth starts within, it begins with the seed. So that means if you are starting anything without a seed, it's a useless effort. Remember, things have to start with a seed and then have to end with seeds. Okay, so the principle of wealth starts from within, but it begins. So that means the set time begins the process with a seed. And then that seed must have the capacity to become fruit bearing, because a fruit is that evidence that shows, that encases and reproduces other seeds. So it means that even if you start from within, even if you start with a seed, if that seed doesn't bear fruit, then there is no way for you to come up with multiple other seeds. So you can see how simple things are, but how easy they are not. So it must also be distributive or reproductive. That means out of the seeds that you have, the seeds that you have must have encoded in them the ability to also continue the process all over again. And that is the cycle of wealth. Now, it must eventually have a life of its own. That means it must have a system that runs by itself. So when a seed drops to the ground out of a ripe fruit, the same process starts again. This is the metaphorical part of wealth creation. Now, when it comes to the practical aspect, then we're going to get into the more serious matter. But this is where we need to begin things. And I also want you to draw an attention exactly from the background. Now, this is just in passing, and for people who are able to catch it, you find it very useful for you. One of the propulsions for a man, by man, I'm talking about the generic male and female, a man who is advancing in wealth is that they, in their consciousness, they go for building cities. If you are not yet thinking of building cities, you're not operating by the principles of wealth. Because a lot of people call themselves wealthy, but they are operating under the survival and the subsistence system. Okay, that is not wealth. That might be riches, that might be comfort, whatever you call it. But when we're talking about wealth, it has to be distributive, it has to be reproductive. Okay, so one of the things we need to understand about wealth, and we said something about having a life of its own, that is building systems. There is a clause about systems that you also need to know. The old systems will no longer serve you. And what does this mean? You need to listen attentively to this. The life of a system of wealth is not always eternal. So what it means is that in time, it dies, and you actually need to have another system. I'm going to explain that very soon. The next thing is that you need to have to break through. This is where the challenge is. Break through into another dispensation of wisdom and economy when you learn to find higher laws. By your own body, BYB, by your own body, finding higher laws. So this is a personal search that you have to make yourself. It's getting a bit interesting. Now, these higher laws are actually sealed or concealed in darkness or in dark matters through the encryption process known as mysteries. So in order to find higher laws, higher systems, they are always hidden, concealed, or sealed, encrypted using the technology of mysteries. So it is when you understand how to decode or break mysteries, that is when you actually have access to higher laws. And through these higher laws, you can now engage better and newer systems of operation. We're getting somewhere. Now, when it comes to unlocking new mysteries, I'm going to get a bit spiritual on you here. Pardon me. When it comes to unlocking new mysteries, a couple of things are involved. The first things are wisdoms. Now, wisdoms come by higher intelligence of events or prophecies. Now, they're very important. Now, higher intelligence of event means that by inspiration or revelation, you stumble upon something that is higher than yourself. Or by prophetic utterances, you are able to gain access into this higher points of intelligence. Now, prophecies means different things. They are either words that have been spoken in the past that foretells the future. This could be in books, they could be in news, they could be in anything. Or words that you're getting by revelation presently that talks about things that are about to come. Now, the next things are altars. You need these in breaking seals. You need wisdoms, you need altars. By altars, we mean a platform of trade, a platform of exchange, or a platform of partnership. That means by this higher intelligence, they need to be done or performed upon altars. And altars are planes of trading. Trading where you transfer information for alliances, where you transfer life for wealth, for power. It's a point of trade. It's also a point of exchange. You exchange one thing for another, because in the higher realms, there are always exchanges. And then partnerships, which a lot of people do, which you partner or form alliances with higher intelligences, higher beings, or mystic bodies of knowledge in order to be able to unlock mysteries. One of the things you need to understand is many of the things we call technology today are actually broken through by the instrumentalities of wisdoms. This is higher intelligence, and it is done through altars. Now, we also have the third thing, which is priesthood. Now, this is very important. Pardon the spelling. It's actually the skill of engagement. Okay, engagement might be a different language, not English, but translating it into English is an engagement, the skill of engagement. Now, the thing is, if you do not have priesthood, which is the skill of engagement in layman's term could be an education, could be exposure, could be science, psychology, philosophy, spirituality, anything that allows you to engage on the altars in order to get wisdoms. Okay, so you can see the progression. Starting from priesthood pushes you into altars where you do the trade. The knowledge of the wisdoms now comes to you. Now, this is how to break mysteries. Now, many of the things I might be saying at this moment might seem a bit far-fetched, and that's because we are still dealing with the seeds. Now, by the time we begin to manifest into the plants, then everything begins to make a whole lot of sense to you. So let's talk about the first example. Now, one of the breakthrough in a couple of centuries ago was the Wright brothers when they created or they broke through into the airplane. That is where they moved from the laws of gravities and cars, automobiles, into the principles and the laws of lifts from planes. So it was moving from gravity and cars to lifts and planes. At that moment, it was impossible, it was said that it was impossible for man to be in the air, because by then, the wisdom that they had in the then world stopped at automobiles. And so the Wright brothers, going through a lot of research and encounters and all of that, were able to engage and engage and engage until they were able to break through, finding the principles and the laws that support the lifting through experiments, science, and all of that. Okay, so that is it. So the question is, how easy did the breakthrough come? It didn't come very easy. There were lots of trials, lots of errors, and lots of other things. So one of the things you need to understand is that breaking through is never easy. And that's the reason why not everybody gets to do it. It's just a few couple of people within every generation that tend to do it. At the time, it was Steve Jobs. At the time, it was Bill Gates. At the time, it was Jeff Bezos. At the time, it was Elon Musk, and at the time it was Mark Zuckerberg. Okay, all those people broke through certain levels of higher intelligence in order to come up with a system that is able to trap and create wealth. So experiments are based on your knowledge, your exposure, the highest zenith of the things you know. You begin to try out those laws and principles to see what holds and what works. Okay, now experiments are the things you do from your own part. However, when those things do not work, that is the universe actually giving you feedback that you have not yet perfected your knowledge or the principle of the laws that you are trying to engage into the wisdom of the higher systems. Okay, and so mistakes are not really bad. They are just things that you need to understand that you've not done it well, and so you need to have a rethink in order to engage your priesthood better, and then in order to engage your altars well, so that the higher wisdoms can come to you. One of the things you also need to know that in order to do this, a lot of resources have to go into it. So funding, it could be financial capital, relationship capital. Many people who broke through needed funding at one point. So what am I saying? You can have a world-changing idea. If you do not have resources, it will die with you. Okay? So while you are having that idea, you must also create a space where you're thinking of funding, because you need funding in the natural realm in order to get materials, resources, and even perform all of your experiments and testing. It's like people who have products today and you're going to do beta testing, market testing. You need resources, for all of these things. And also working from the idea, which is the seed, until the idea begins to work. That is the fruit of the seed made manifest. Remember, the seed is what goes into the ground. People don't see what's working in the seed, but when it becomes a plant, you are doing experiment, you are perfecting your laws and principles until it gets to a mature plant, and then fruits begin to come out. And once the fruits then get matured, then the seeds can now come out. So that's the first example. The second example, I had to use two examples because these are two extremes. Now, the first example is working through principles, having an idea and trying to perfect it until it works. The second is what we call terraformation. And like you can see on the screen, terraformation is a means of colonizing heavenly bodies. Okay? So for example, Mars is the planet Mars is being tried to be terraformed so that it can be inhabitable for humans. What is the process of terraformation? Terraformation is also a path in creating wealth. So that means you find a fallow ground, a desert ground, a useless ground, a place that is void, that is formless, that is empty. Does it strike a bell? The earth was without form and void, and then the Spirit of God moved in an effort to terraform the earth. Okay, so terraformation is also a process. Now, when it comes to terraformation, you need to understand that one of the first things you need to find or you need to bring is the basic signs of life. So that means upon that planet, upon that system, upon that fallowed ground, you need to either find or you need to bring to it the basic signs of life. And what you need to do, what that does is to see if that life will be sustained. Remember, When you bring the life to that fallowed place, what will sustain the life is what? Atmospheres and environment. Good. Atmospheres and environment. And so when the atmosphere is right, if it's not right, you keep changing it, altering it. So you can see the 4 pictures you see on the screen could actually take thousands of years. Okay, so the first point, it was dry, deserted. From the second point, there were figments of waters. It's turning a little bit green, but the life is not well advanced. And the third one, you can see it's getting greener. Great atmosphere is forming. The environment is taking shape. And the fourth one is now well suited for life. So atmospheres and environment play key roles. So once you have the seed doesn't change form from the point of the seed. It is your understanding of atmospheres and environment that will give life to the seed. So what the Wright brothers were doing is they had an idea, and so they kept testing for the right atmosphere and the right environment through laws and principles and science and research and experiments and mistakes and funding. So once the atmosphere and environment became right to sustain that life, that's when you have a breakthrough. And then once you have a breakthrough, you now dictate the rules of the economy. And what is that? Creating that system in which everything now has a life of its own. Okay, depending on the idea you're working with, or the system, or the product you're working with, you will either use one of these 2 examples. So one thing you need to understand is that you are racing with time, or you're racing against time. But the key thing you need to understand here is that you must move faster than the rate of decay. So for example, you cannot be using the moment a breakthrough comes, it actually begins to decay. That is the nature of every physical life on the earth. And that's why you need to keep building, you need to keep innovating, so that you keep racing with time. The moment you start racing against time, it's becoming inevitable for the crash of your ideas. And that actually tells you that civilization, that technology, that system, its time is moving and another dispensation is coming. So what you need to do is then to focus on that new dispensation, so that you can get higher laws, higher system that enables you to move. So like flight now, when you're in a dispensation of flight, gravity still acts, but you're operating on a higher law. You're no longer on the ground, you are off the ground, and then you begin to see a new economy, which is the economy of space. And then you begin to traverse it and see what new thing you can do to it. Okay, so you must understand that you're racing against time. Now, this is the important part. We talked about things in the ground, and then we talk about things off the ground. Now, that analogy could mean different things. Now, the people who follow the stock market or control the stock market, or are seeking auspicious moments, a lot of them follow through the tail of the stars. Even in scripture, stars have very significant things in telling the times and the seasons. The book of Genesis tells us that the sun, the moon, and the stars were to tell the times and the events that will come upon the earth. Now, at the time of this recording, there are 2 important things, like you can see on the screen. There are 2 constellations that hold very key importance of what's going to happen pretty soon upon the earth. The first is the constellation of Leo, that's like the lion, and the second is the constellation of the bear, called the Great Bear. I think it's called Ursa Major, or the Ursa Major. Okay, so these 2 are very important in this season as we are moving and advancing forward. So you need to understand that when we are moving in this case, the lion signifies a moving, impending government, and the bear signifies a moving, impending economy. Bear usually stands for economy, and lion usually stands for leadership, or government. And so the movement of these actually tell a great tale. It means that in the coming years, there will be a lot of change, a new adventure, a new thing coming into the government space, global government, and also global economy. So it has been foretold that there might be a season of global economic collapse. And that is one of the reasons why you need to learn to create wealth. But how you create wealth must not be from the present system, but by a new system. Because the present system can no longer sustain you, hence you need to move and advance into a higher system. And all of the things that we have talked about up until now are the things that you need to note when it comes to the working of this higher system. Now, in 2022 and moving forward, there will be that new dispensation. And this is where government will hold a key in the wealth of nations, and or government will hold a key in the impoverishment of nations. This is very important. Now, there are a couple of things you need to have in mind, and this is where you become a watcher of the times. You need to learn to catch patterns. When patterns of government, when patterns of economy. So as at the moment right now, global economy is under tension from China, from US, and even in Europe. And the government, you might not know this, the government of certain economies or certain nations are already trying to find a way around it. Some of the ways might not really be in the best interest of the people, but everybody's trying to sort themselves out. Now, the key thing here is that you need external help for the wisdom to move ahead. Because the intelligence that is needed. So let's think about it. One of the economy that will lead into the future is cryptocurrency, which is the new economy, or blockchain. Blockchain is the new economy. Crypto is the new currency. So there's a difference between economy and currency. So a lot of people are focusing on cryptocurrency, which is good. But you need to understand that what you should focus more should be on the blockchain technology, which houses the economy itself. Once you are able to secure your space in the economy, the currency is going to flow in your direction. Okay? So, what you bring to the table here is skill. And when we talk about skill, it's knowledge. Is your ability to perform and your ability to solve problems. So there is now a global problem of government. There is now a global problem of economy. There is now a global problem of wealth. How many of you are actually thinking of solving these problems? If you are not, it's a sign that you are inside the system and the system has created a lead on you. Now remember, this system is the old system that is already passing away. If you do not raise your consciousness and awareness out of that system, when that system passes away, guess what? You're going to go with it. And this is why from 2022 onward, you need to advance into the new system of wealth creation, because that's where the new money is. That's where the new economy is. That's where the new system of wealth will be. Now, everything is not blockchain. Another thing is the metaverse, which is the virtual reality, alternate reality, improved technology. And how do you do this? Think about it. Everything that works in the old system, you must replicate it in the new system. However, it's not going to be a copy and paste thing, because the system of the new system, the operation of the new system is higher. So things are going to change form a little bit. So I'll give you an example. School education used to be in a class. You go to school in a physical environment. The disruption came, and then education is going digital. Now, from digital, education is now actually going virtual when we start using virtual reality, augmented reality in the metaverse to have a different exposure of education. Now, what are some of the systems or the economies that will be affected? Education is going to be affected. Social media and communication is going to be affected. Entertainment is going to be affected. So we need to begin to latch into these opportunities. See, listen to me. If you have spent all your life perfecting a system, perfecting a life, perfecting an economy in the system that is going to be passed away, I'm sorry to tell you this, everything will be gone with it. So the best time now is to begin to think into the future, which has become the present, and see how you can have your own share of it. Someone thought about the cryptocurrency. Someone thought about Bitcoin, Ethereum, Doge, Cardano, and all of those. Someone thought about it. What are you thinking about? If you're not thinking this way, it's one of two things. You've given up, or you're not fighting hard enough. Remember, I said you must work, run, move even faster than time. Because if you are racing against time, that means functioning from a point of disadvantage. Wealth must be built. You don't speak wealth, you build wealth. And that's where skill is important. That's where knowledge is important. That's where association is important. That's where exposure is important. That's where priesthood is important. That's where altars are important. And that's where wisdoms are important. So even though priesthood, altars, wisdom are fanciful words, you must be able to decode them into the words of the earth that make sense to you. So, you talk about priesthood as skill. What level of education do you have? What level of finance? What resources do you have? What capacity of knowledge or intelligence do you carry in order to solve the world's problem? Are you thinking in the future, or you're thinking in the past? Remember, building takes time. And so the earlier you start to build your wealth, the better for you. And how do you build your wealth? By going to the place where the money is coming to and waiting for it there. That means you see the future and then you begin to build now, mirroring what you're seeing in the future. So, you must learn to trade knowledge and time for skill and power. Because the things that you need to build wealth are skill and power. Power is what makes you create anything, mentally, spiritually. Skill is what brings that power into materiality. We have a lot of powerful people that cannot materialize anything. They are philosophers. They are motivational speakers. But you need to learn that there is the dirty work of skill where you build from foundation, from ground. From the seed, you begin to work on it. You find the ground. You condition the atmosphere. You institutionalize the environment. You weed it out to make sure that the wrong things do not interfere with it. And then you see the plants coming up. You follow through with the plant until the plant gets to a point of maturation and maturity. And then you keep watching after it until the fruits come. You keep watching until the fruit becomes mature. And then when the fruit is mature, you can have access to the seeds. Remember, wealth must be reproductive and distributive. This is supposed to be like a charge to you. If you are not building anything upon the new system, you might miss the wealth transfer. I say it again. If you are not building anything intentionally on the new system, then you're missing the wealth transfer. It's not about building in the present system. You have to build into a new system. There'll be challenges, contention like we're having with blockchain and all. But fiat is not the future. The future is cryptocurrency. And eventually, all nations begin to adopt it. Now, you need to understand how government work. Government will always want to make sure things come to their advantage. And when it comes to the economy of nation, one of the things that define the economy of nation is the reserve that nation have. And it's from the reserve that shows how prosperous, how wealthy that nation is. So the reason why there is a current fight with cryptocurrency is because the nations do not have reserves of cryptocurrency. And so while they're creating policies and laws to limit people from having or engaging in these things, they are actually working towards mining and reserving it. Now, by the time they have it in surplus, then it becomes a legal tender. And then they are trying to build that centralized system all over again. So you need to understand, when you want to build wealth, you start from the bottom. And you need to understand the place of trade through skill and power. And power could be anything. Now, one of the things we do at the LAMAD community is that we expose ourselves to information, to trainings, to skill development, to investment opportunities in order to be able to catch and leverage on this thing. One of the things you need to understand and note is that in order to be wealthy, you must have an association. It's either you have an association, or you find a territory, or you find a wisdom. But the best thing is to have a combination of all of this. Territory, that means the right place, which has the right atmosphere and environment, the right network where you can leverage on funds and resources, and the knowledge that brings you skill. And skill is that thing that makes you the sought after person. A lot of people are going into NTF now. Start to think about it. It is not first about the money. It's about the knowledge. Just the same way with investment. Investment is not first about the money. It's about the knowledge. It's about the mastery. So when you have mastered investment, and I just have to say this here. If you're going into investment because of the money, you're at the bottom of the chain, of the pyramid. The people at the top of the pyramid have mastered it. Remember the process. They are the ones who control the atmosphere and the environment. And you are just scavenging with your seeds. So think about this. Now, one of the things, because I'm in rounding things up here, there is more to this. The purpose of this conference is to spark up your imagination, is to awaken your thoughts and your soul in order to know that you should not die at this present level. You must not miss the wealth that is passing through. The wealth is already waiting for people, but you need to understand this. It is simple, but it's never easy. And that's why many people will listen to this today and they will not take actions. They will not improve their skills. They will keep searching after money. They will not improve their association. They will keep looking after money. They will not get mastery of the environment and atmosphere of economy and finance. They will keep looking after money. And you need to understand that money is a tool, is an end product of something. It is from wealth that money comes. So if you seek wealth, you will have money. But if you seek money, you might never get wealth. And so you need to understand how this process works. Now, I understand that you could have questions, concern, or even disagree with some of the things I've mentioned here. But I need you to understand that the LAMAD community is also that place where we answer certain questions. So if you're not a part of the community and you want to, comment below or reach out to the person who recommended this conference to you. And that's the reason why people who are able to access this must be referred by someone who is already a member of the LAMAD community. And I'm going to end with this. From 2022 moving forward, it's going to be a slim chance for we not to have a global economic collapse. Now, the economic collapse is not the problem. The problem is what is coming, what wind is blowing that is collapsing the economy. It's that wind you should pay attention to. That's the future. That's where the wealth is coming. And so when you are able to set your sail to glide and float through the waves and through the winds that are coming, then you're going to get to the other side prosperous. It might still seem like I'm speaking in parables, but deep into 2022, when those harsh conditions begin to come, where money begins to fail, when systems begin to fail, I hope you will remember that sometime before 2022 kicked off, you attended a session or a conference, or you stumbled upon it through whatever means. And then you would ask yourself, did you grow your skill in order to be able to maneuver through the waves and the storms that are coming? There is a whole lot more I really wish to share with you, but not everything has to be shared in public. That's why the LAMAD community is actually an exclusive community, and from time to time we open the window for new people to come in, and so if you're close to anyone or with myself, you would always get to know when the next window opens, and then you might actually have the chance to be a part of it. But I also need to tell you this. LAMAD community is not the Alpha and Omega. The point is, even if you're not a part of the LAMAD community, find a community that serves similar values, where they're already plotting into the future and leveraging upon it in order to create the path that traps the wealth that is coming. Okay? So I wish you all the best, and I look forward to you enjoying a season of grace and wealth. But remember, it is not by wishful thinking. It comes by hard work. It comes by priesthood, which is skill and solving problems. It comes by altars, learning how to trade with higher things and higher people. And then wisdom, which is that which breaks mysteries open and grants unto you the higher systems of operation through which you command the atmosphere and the environment. I'm going to be stopping here. More content and all I will be sharing exclusively with the LAMAD community, and so look forward to joining the community, and I look forward to having you be a part of it as well. Till the next time I see you, if our paths cross, I say unleashing Soteria, Lambano Soteria. Have a wonderful day and have a blessed life.